Welcome to another edition of the Resilient Living Podcast, a show dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms. All right, we all want to live that resilient life. We want to live a better life, but where you place yourself geographically is very, very important. There's a lot of strategic things that you can do to get the most out of a life, to be happy, to be healthy. It depends on your age. It depends on your wants and your needs. And to stay mobile and to stay inventive and imaginative and have the adventurous spirit to go out there and seek those places so that you live the rest of your life to its best, why not? This is called resilient living. So let's get into strategic living locations. That is the theme for today. And the very first one I want to start off with is living on the fringe of the wealthy. And I'm a thousandaire. I want to make it clear I'm not a millionaire. I don't know if I'll ever be. I don't want to go through all the trouble and the hard work. Maybe one day, but I've got a lot of things to do right now with my children and myself, a lot of things that I'm enjoying my life doing, and it's because of my strategic location. I fringe the wealthy. And I used to have the mindset of living where it was cheaper and in the poorer ends of towns. And in my past, I used to live close outside of Los Angeles, California. Not really close. It was about 50 miles away. Very expensive to live in that town, but I lived way out in the outskirts, inland, where it was really affordable. It was about half the price, of living out there in Los Angeles. But guess what? The wages and I'm in the service industry and construction, there wasn't a lot of money out there. I was surrounded by people like myself, middle class to upper middle class. And sure, we were all saving money, but nobody really had the big bucks to make things happen. So after a while, when I wisened up, I started to advertise in richer neighborhoods, Beverly Hills, Hollywood, Los Angeles, stuff like that, towards the coastal region. And I made a lot more money. But guess what? I had one thing that money can't buy. Time, right? My time was being taken away from me. And I was driving probably about anywhere from 3 at the minimum round trip to go to work and come back home, 3 hours a day. I would say there were a couple of times, about probably 30% of the time, it might have been like 5 hours. Now you start adding that up. We talk on the show a lot about organizing your life like a business, and you start adding up 3 hours a day. Right? If we look at the math, 3 times 5 working days, Monday through Saturday, that's 15 hours. That's almost 2 entire days of work a week, extra, not making any money, just driving down the road, very unhappily, sitting in traffic and living a miserable life. The moment I switched up and moved to North County, San Diego, and within a 10-minute drive, 5-minute drive from where I'm strategically located, I have the McMansions. I have access to the people who really have the money to trade for my services and goods. The way I've done this is I've strategically planned my life where I live in a tiny house in an RV park full time. And I pay about a third of the rent that most people pay around me. So I do have little pockets around here where we have the middle class, the poor, mostly the lower middle class to middle class and upper crust, I'd say. The upper crust pizza of civilization, upper middle class. But there's not very many of them, and it's very difficult for them to survive. Whereas for me, I'm thriving. Because my overhead is so low, and because I can charge a lot of money, a lot. Some people, if you go too low, you won't get the job. They think something's wrong. But I've actually gone high, and I've gone higher, and I've experimented to go even higher than that. And that's how I afford to be a thousandaire, not a millionaire. The strategic lifestyle design in which I live, everything has gone perfect to plan. These are those type of things, where you tell yourself, I should have done this years ago. So there's pockets. The rich people need people to serve them. There's apartment buildings and stuff like that. And the good thing about surrounding yourself by fringe living, the wealthy, is that there's a lot less crime. There's a lot more people busy trying to keep their heads afloat. The poor, the middle class, the lower class, they're working so hard. How do I know this? A lot of the middle class and the upper class clients that I get in my business, A lot of them don't have the money to fix things, and I can tell by the neighborhood sometimes where I get some information to lead, and I'm like, oh, that's not going to probably turn out too good, and usually it doesn't. I've been doing this long enough. But the sad thing I heard is a lot of people moving because they said, you know what? Why are we even here? Well, what am I doing? All I do is work. My wife works 2 jobs. I work 10 hours a week. On the weekends, we're trying to get our lives together and keep this place up. We have a nice house. We live in a nice environment. We're living in paradise. The weather's great, but all we do is work. I haven't seen the beach. I haven't seen the mountains in over a year. We're just too tired on the weekends. By the time we keep up everything, there's just no time. That's no way to live. I'm actually, on a little side note here, that's what I'm waiting for. I've been talking about a possible crash, investing money in real estate, maybe moving out from tiny, and possibly, not saying I'm going to do this, but I see an opportunity in these rich neighborhoods, the fringe living of the wealthy, where they're not going to want to probably purchase those homes, maybe for rentals and stuff like that, real estate investors. But for the most part, for a primary home, I think that we're going to have a lot of people as the times get harder. And I'm not saying that I hope times get harder. I hope that they don't. But I have no control of that. The one thing I do know is a lot of people who are already taxed, already at full capacity, and inflation and things like that start rising, they're going to want to ditch their properties. And they're going to probably start ditching them in the hundreds, if not thousands, if not even possibly millions. And I think that's going to be the opening as far as getting a home. If you're a first-time home buyer, you're somebody who wants to invest in something, I think that's where you're going to want to keep your attention on. So yeah, fringe living the wealthy, that is probably, like I said, that is the best thing that has changed my life for the better. And I don't care if you're a bartender, all right? Think about this, guys. You're a bartender, go down to, because I know somebody who's very close, needs to be in my life. You could probably guess who. They are a bartender. And I keep telling them, and they don't listen, is go out to the really, really McMansion areas, the really rich areas. Who's going to tip you? Right? Who's going to give you those big old tips? The wealthy people. Where do the wealthy people go? They go to very nice places, not okay places. When they want their night off, they're going to go to those fancy, nice bars that have everything, right? Just nice amenities and everything. There's a really high, classy place. And guys, that's where you're going to make your money. I don't care if you're a plumber, electrician, painter, waitress, a bartender, wherever you are, unless you're in retail and something like that. I don't think it's very strategic for you. Other than if you're working at a retail store and you're fringe living the rich, it'd probably be the last place that's going to close down, right? Instead of living over in where I used to live was Ontario, California. It's the armpit of California, one of them, right? And there are some people and some things going on, mostly the middle class and upper class. But as things progress and get harder, if I think what's going to happen, what people are saying is going to happen, those are the kind of areas that you want to avoid. Going by where the rich are, I mean, it's common sense, right? They've got the money. I don't know how these people get the money, really. It's like, what do you do? All right, climate considerations. We got water and growing food. If you want to strategically run your life, plan your life out, some of you guys might have, with climate, you may have bones that are hurting. There's a lot of people who would move to Arizona, Florida, the snowbirds and stuff like that. As they progress and get older, the cold starts to hurt your body, and they feel like they can live a lot more comfortable where it's not so cold. So climate considerations, especially if you're a weather baby like me, that's why I've chose San Diego. Other choices I have is like maybe South Carolina or Florida, places where it's tropical. I do not like being cold. Tell me if you don't in the comments below. Tell me what you think about living in the cold, because I am a weather brat baby. I hate it. Even right now in California, it's getting down to like 40 degrees, and I'm crying, man. I'm over here with like layers and layers of clothing on. So yeah, climate considerations are very important, I think, for your happiness. But also, if you're looking to get to be resilient and live sustainable, you got to go to a place where there's water. And that's the problem I have with California right now. Is that there's plenty of money, everything's going great. I think it's a good place to be, to maybe live tiny like I'm doing. and paying a third of the rent that most people are, having a very low overhead, it's a very good place to make that money to buy the area of your dreams, right? Because you go to lower class places, guess what? The pay rate's lower. I don't care what job you're in, it's going to be lower, right? So if you're fringe living the rich and you're living like I do, saving up for retirement or to get out of debt or something is the smartest strategy you can do. But yeah, water is a big issue here. And, we don't get a lot of rain. Right now, as I'm recording this, we're supposed to get like an inch of rain today. But, a lot of the land just gets dry out here. So as far as living off the land is a big thing that I want to do. I can do it with gardening and vegetables and stuff like that. But to have trees and, perennials instead of just annuals, I don't think that this is the place. I mean, there's some certain things that we can do here, like agave, eucalyptus, as far as edibles go, I would say date palms, carob and things like that. But how much dates can you eat? How much carob? How much mesquite flowers, right? These type of things that can you actually eat? Olives. These will all be great things, but this Mediterranean climate, very beautiful, very nice, but not enough water to sustain this amount of people. And that's a very dangerous situation. So strategic location, California is like, it's teeter-tottering, man. It is precarious here with the water issues. And also, what is nice, though, is growing. It's perfect growing conditions. You can grow something year-round. But why not strategically place yourself where there's more water? That's why I'm thinking more of Florida, South Carolina, where you kind of get the weather that you do, the warmth. I know it's a lot different than California, a lot with humidity and stuff like that. But you got temperatures that don't get down to freezing. Because you guys got to understand, when temperatures get down to freezing, everything ceases to stop. At 45 degrees, microbiology in the soil and everything just really starts to go to rest. And plants, everything. Everybody just kind of takes a nap for the winter. So in a warmer climate, you have better growing temperatures. And I think you have a better chance of growing stuff year-round and providing for yourself. So strategically, if you're going for the sustainable living life, you might want to go to a place where you have the right type of temperatures, where it doesn't freeze over, but also you're going to need the water. Okay, so next I have wind, solar, and hydropower. If you're going for wind, again, on the sustainable, strategically your location, and you're living in, say, a hole, right, a pocket, we have such places as Bakersfield, California, where it's literally a pit. It's, below sea level, I believe. It's a low land, but there's not going to be a lot of wind, to my knowledge, in my opinion. There are blasts of wind that come through, but being in lower areas and stuff like that, whereas when you're up on the hills or in the mountains, you get a more of a wind, or in the ocean, is a very good place for wind power because there's nothing obstructing it. The closer you get on flat land and everything, that's why when tornadoes and hurricanes come in, say places like Florida, Walt Disney designed, in Orlando, Florida, he designed Walt Disney World to be in the center there because it's the least likely to be hit. As those tornadoes and those hurricanes come in, they kind of dwindle having to go that far inland. So wind power, strategically where you're going to live to create your own energy is very important. It's also for solar and hydropower. Obviously with hydropower, if you don't have running water year round, you're not going to really produce electricity. And hydropower, for those of you who don't know, is where running water goes. It filters into a vessel of some sort, either a pipe or something, and it directs through gravity, through pressure, comes out of a nozzle and actually spins a wheel that turns an alternator that makes electricity, and it just runs off nothing. It's got its pros and its cons, but that's what I don't want to talk about. I want to talk about your strategic area where you're living. Now, solar, I'll give you guys a tip. A lot of people probably don't know. Solar panels actually work better when they're cold. When they get overheated, they actually lose a certain percentage of their output power. So that's why it's nice to leave airspace in between them. But you'll notice in cooler climates, as long as the solar panel's clean, it actually works its best when it's actually cold. As long as it's got the light, it doesn't really care about whether it's as long as it has the light. It doesn't really care really much about the cold. When the heat comes, everything starts to expand and it puts stress on it, basically. So I want to move into strategic locations of soil types. Now, I tried to get a gentleman on the show, and maybe in the future we will. And maybe I shouldn't mention his name. really good with soil nutrients. And I'll tell you guys some stories about what some people have done. They took rabbits, right? This is why strategic location is very important. They took rabbits, and I think they did 4 case studies. They put like 10 rabbits in different cages, 4 different cages. They went from 4 corners of United States, or that, I think it was that state the story went. And one area was very cold and rainy. One place was dry, a desert. Another place was kind of just right, not too much rain, not too much heat and everything. And they got these different biomes, these different microclimates, and they produced food and grain and stuff to feed the animals. What they found was that in a certain amount of years, that certain amount of rabbits that were fed consistently from one corner of the state, they actually evolved, their evolution, they shrunk in size because there wasn't that much nutrients in the food, whereas some almost doubled. They found this out with soldiers during World War II, I think it was, or World War I, I think it was World War I. And that's when we didn't have, access of gas-powered motors to send as much. A lot of stuff was done localized, basically, to make the story short. And what they found was that regionally, there was a lot more soldiers that were unfit for duty because of health reasons, right? They weren't just as strong as others in different regions. And what they were finding, or what the hypothesis is on it, is that areas that have high intensity of rain, such as like, say, Oregon, Washington, and stuff like that, a lot of the soil nutrients get washed out from constant. It's like being rinsed. It's like a constant washing machine. Whatever you put in there, it just gets rinsed right out and goes down to the rivers and out into the ocean. So there's not a lot of vitamin nutrient content in the food, even the meats, the cows that eat the grasses and stuff like that. There's things that survive. They just need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, right? But there's not copper, zinc, and phosphorus, all the micronutrients and macronutrients and stuff like that. So basically through animal testing and also in human beings, which is a test we'll never be able to do now because food is imported from all over the world, I think we're a lot better in health. Another hypothesis was pygmy people, basically on islands where it rains a lot and it's tropical. If you notice, they're very tiny people. Through evolution, their bodies had to condense down so they don't need, they couldn't be large people because they would need more intake. Their body, everything wants to survive, so their evolution was to shrink down so they didn't need so much nutrients. So very interesting in soil types of where you go. You got acidity, alkalinity. From what I hear back east, I think it was New Hampshire and stuff like that. There's just like the best, this type of soil. You could just go in the middle of the forest and stick your arms down into your elbows and it's just like a foot of just rich, dark chocolate soil, and you go to places like Hawaii where I've been, the soil looks like brown cottage cheese. It's just clumped up. It's clay-like. And a lot of that, again, has been rinsed like a washing machine. And there is stuff that survives, stuff that lives there, but I think the mineral and vitamin nutrient content of that soil is very bleak, if I can say it that way. So yeah, soil types, if you're looking strategically to place yourself, that is something to definitely take in consideration. If you want to forage, if you want to hunt, if you want to do these things, if you want to utilize nature, these are definitely places like where I'm at now. It's very difficult to go hunting in the mountains here, and there's not much accessible in San Diego. There's wild pig, I think, is a great abundance. We do have turkey, and we have deer, but not really too many. And we have so many people living here that to go over and to hunt these animals, it's almost impossible. Like there's just they're being depleted every single day. Well, during hunting season. Living in Oregon, that's the same thing. When the salmon came out, it was just shoulder to shoulder people, on the river. Everybody's just, as a salmon run comes and everybody knows, they're all going out there. So, and that's way out in the country. So strategically living, if you want to forage for berries, mushrooms, and things like that, blueberries, if you want to hunt, fish, you got to kind of set yourself up in a good place where we don't have too much population and where there'll be stuff readily available for you, especially if you're relying on that to live sustainably, and be a large chunk of you becoming a producer instead of a consumer of your life. Another thing I have on my notes here is medical needs. As we talked about going out in the country, right? If you're on medications and you're not so healthy, you may have a heart attack or stroke or something like that, or you need any kind of medical attention, I think it may behoove you to stay at least at the minimum like 15 minutes out of a major city or someplace. Just make sure you're close to, as you age, in case you need medical attention. This could be a life or death situation. Where we lived, you call an ambulance, it was probably about 30 minutes in the state of Oregon. Out in the country, it's probably about a good 30 minutes before they're able to get to you. And if we have hard rains and mudslides and ice on the road, it could be longer. It could be about an hour. You're sitting there having a stroke, or a heart attack or something. You're laying there on the ground for an hour just figuring out if you're going to live or die. It's not some place I think that you want to be. So I say this too because when we're younger, we're like, I'm going to retire in this place. I'm going to build the house of my dreams and everything. And it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And people don't think about the long game. The long game, as you get older, if you don't take care of yourself and you need those medical needs, it could be a matter of life or death. And also, if you have to, like a lot of old people I know, drive back and forth to get doctor visits and stuff like that. Do you want to really drive, an hour and a half, 2 hour round trip every time you got to go to the doctors once a week? Maybe, maybe not, but something to take in consideration. The one thing I detest and I do not like is the government rules and regulations. Strategically placing yourself. California is probably one of the worst places. You got to get a permit for everything. I think if you're going to fart, you have to have a permit. Not yet, but probably coming soon. Department of Make You Sad. Government rules, restrictions, and regulations and stuff. It's just ridiculous. If you're going to build yourself your own home, guys, we have places where you can't even grow food on your front lawn, and I understand to a certain extent, but not really. I think things are changing, but California is one of the worst places. I can imagine like New York and stuff like that. Now, I look at some places which do exist here in California, and there's some places. I know one I was looking at before. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe it'll pop in my mind. It was over by Corona, California, by Riverside. And it's like right at the tip of my tongue right here. Well, anyways, it's a small place in the Inland Empire, and it's a horse country. They have horses. They have Western bars and stuff like that. They even have ties for people to ride your horse to the store and like tie up your horse, like the OK Corral style. When I drove through that place, there was gardens in front, in everybody's front yards and stuff like that. There was chickens and things. So you may want to consider, if you're going to live a permaculture lifestyle and natural farming, live sustainable and stuff like that. You start putting solar panels, wind power up, a greenhouse in your backyard, all those kind of things. You could be on the wrong side of town. Things could change, laws could change, and you could be 86'd out. And especially if you're relying on this and you invest, some of these things, solar panels and stuff like that, cost a lot of money. So it's very important of where you are, who you're surrounded with, and what the future is going to do. Two of the states I like the most right now is Florida and Texas, because it seems like they just don't give a crap. They're not bending for some of these government rules and regulations that they're trying to put on the whole entire country. They're like, no, we're not going to shut down, and no, we're not going to do these things. We're going to keep everything open, and they just have a really good tax laws. Why do you think Elon Musk and a lot of people left California or in Texas? And strategic location. Strategic attraction is probably a word that we want to talk about. What's going to happen in the future when we have we have Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, I can't remember other people, a lot of big, not IBM, I think it was Intel or somebody, a computer company that moved out of San Francisco. A lot of them are going to Texas. I think Google was building a huge warehouse out there. Amazon, I think, was doing the same. So now we got all this investment, all this money, and these big people coming into these specific. Look at Texas by itself. That's attractive. That's going to make the state money. That state is going to be in a very good state, if you will, whereas California making everything so difficult for people. People are voting with their feet and saying, hey, forget it. Keep all your crap. I heard they're even trying to tax people to get out of California. That's how ridiculous it is. I don't know if that's true. I just couldn't even imagine looking at something like that. It's disgusting. But moving out of here and going to other states, that state's going to be rich. It's going to be wealthy. It's going to have a lot of business and things going on, better education, and just better life, I think, for everybody. Okay, so next on my list is social interactions. Now, I am pretty much a me person. I don't really need to socialize too much, but that is very difficult. And the people that think that they don't, I think you got another thing coming. It is in our natural genetics to want to share things, and not to say that I never want to share stuff, but I can do just fine getting away from the majority of humanity and just living in a jungle or a forest someplace on a large, lot, farming, growing my own food, producing my own energy, doing podcasts like this and stuff, and just coming up with inventions. Like, I would love to do that. I just don't have time for the negativity, the trash, and just the crap that comes with the majority of society. But social interactions, I think, is very important for people. I think if you're especially a religious person, going down to the Bible Belt, a lot of people don't know back east, southeast, there's a lot of people that are religious. And if you're not religious and you move to a place like that, and your social interactions could be devastating, right? If you're not a believer, if you're a Buddhist or something like that, and you move into certain parts of the country, whatever you are, you're probably going to run into not having much friends. Some of these people take it really, really serious. So where you strategically put yourself should definitely be strategized and thought of. So at the end here, I want to say learning and seeing that there is a strategy in everything. Everything, my friends. We learn from permaculture that at the fringe, at the edge, is where the most diversity of things are. And there is a strategy here. When we look at the fish that live in a pond or a lake, they're going to go to the deep end and they're going to stay away from predators and stuff like that. But when they get hungry, where do they go? They go to the edge. That's a strategy. That's an area. That's a strategic area where the big fish are hiding in the deep to not get eaten by the cranes. The little fish are hiding inside every nook and cranny from everybody, from the big fish and the cranes. They have the most horrible of life, but I guess that's the balance of nature. But there's a strategy right there. When we look at the lives of bears, grizzly bears, I just watched the show on them recently. What is their strategy? They know that life is going to get very hard. They know that it's going to snow and that food is going to be very scarce. So they fatten up as quickly as possible. They go out there and breed, they hunt, they do their social things like that, and kill each other. The animal kingdom is just insane. It's not a place of peace, that's for sure. But they have a strategy of getting themselves all fat, and then when it's freezing cold and everything, they hibernate. Well, we have hard times. I think there's a lot of lessons from nature that we can learn from here. But everything has a strategy. If we want to be successful in life and making money, where does money go? Money goes to where it's treated best. Where is it treated best? Where there's attention. So if anybody wants to make money, you need to have the attention. You need to do stuff. You need to make things happen. If you're a TV producer, a show producer of somebody, and you've got the show that's running, guess who's going to want to come and give you their money? Advertisers. We see like LeBron James and stuff right now of 2021, I guess. I'm not much into basketball, but I've heard of his name, seen him. He's a giant of a man. I mean, that guy's a tree. I'm 6'4", and I'd probably have to climb him like a tree. But this guy has all the attention. He practiced basketball. He got really, really good at it. These people get good by strategizing their lives, by training themselves just almost to death. Like, they live and breathe what they're doing. Now that they're doing that, all the attention's on them, the money, the advertisers, the sponsors, and everybody go there. I just talked about strategically going where money's treated good. To come and make money, I would not want to live in the poor parts of town or even on the outskirts of the poor parts of town, because there's not much money going on with the middle class in any spectrum of the middle class. Where I want to go is right where the rich are at. That's where I want to spend my time. That's where I want to spend my advertising dollars, so I can fatten up my wallet for the winter when everything gets cold or for a catastrophe, and take my mini retirements. That's how I afford to live my life, by strategizing my life, by knowing that everything has a strategy. The birds fly south, in the winter, and they come back in the summer. There's a reason. The buffalo would roam. They'd go from, I heard, all the way from Mexico all the way to Alaska. They migrated. They kept migratory patterns, because if they stayed in one area, they would deplete all the grasses and everything, and there'd be nothing to eat. So there was a strategy there. Elephants know to move on during dry spells. They go to different watering holes and they migrate. There's a migration pattern in nature. Or there's strategies of where things place themselves, like plants. Plants can't live in certain plants can't live in a dry environment, right? They have to be in a place where it's nice and wet. So their strategy is to release their seeds. Some of them live, some of them die. As the wind picks them up, they produce way more than what they can do, way more than what they need. And those plants will blow around all over until they find the area that's perfect for them. So I want you to ask yourselves, by looking at nature and learning that there's strategies to everything, what strategies are you applying to your life? And I think a lot of people are not strategizing their lives. I think that it's being designed for them. And maybe the area that you're in, you're forced to have your life designed for you. It's because of the area that you're in. Maybe you need to move those areas. Maybe that's why some of these rich people have moved out of California, because there's too much tax laws. There's too many things going on, too many restrictions, and they move out and they make a lot more money. They're living the life that they need, that they want to live, and it's more peaceful, more resilient. And I see a lot of people who they kind of just get stuck. I've met a lot of people where it's like, man, I've been living, Chino, California was another place that I lived. And I had friends there and I was like, let's get out of here, man. Let's go up north. Let's go travel. Let's go do some stuff. And they're like, no, I can go for a little while, but this is home, man. I was born and raised here and this is my home. And they hated every single minute of their life there. But they just kind of settled because it's familiar. They're not out there strategizing, looking, going, well, I'm not really getting ahead. I'm not really happy. I can inebriate myself and pretend that I'm happy for a night, but then after I wake up and sober up, I'm still left with the same crap, the same me. Nothing's changed. We need to strategize our lives, people, to get to milk, to harness the power and the beauty and the adventure and the magic of life, sometimes by making a little tiny switch. Going to a new place, doing something new in your life, strategizing everything in your life. How can you get ahead in life if you don't have a plan or a strategy? Notice that everything does. Learn from nature how it has this equilibrium, how it has this symbiotic relationship where it feeds as the leaves fall off of a tree and they start to rot. Right? They protect the moisture. They lock the moisture in by creating their own mulch. Before they did that, they had like solar panels. They were producing photosynthesis and turning light into sugar and feeding that to the microbiology under the soil, which also needs to live under those dead leaves, that mulch, so that the microbiology goes in and there's moisture in there, and the sugar that the trees and the plants let off through rhizomes. These little tiny hairs that come out, and then they drop them, they rot, and they turn to sugar. If I'm explaining that correctly, the microbiology will come and eat up all that sugar which it needs, and then it'll die off. It'll have babies. It'll poop. It'll pee. It'll die, and then it leaves this nutrients that the tree produces its own soil. So it's attracting this microbiology, all these life forms and everything under the soil, and from above, from below. It's being resilient. It's got everything it needs from taking it from two different worlds, and nothing really can harm it unless there was a catastrophe, gets hit by lightning, or there's a huge fire, or if there's a climate shift or something like that. But once it finds its sweet spot, it makes the use of everything from the top to the bottom to the sides, everything. Sets where it plants and grows where it is treated best. All of us have different needs, different wants and things in life, I think. And some of us are just placed in the wrong environment. And if we could just see that, if we could just make a strategy and go, maybe I make this switch, just like I did coming over here from Los Angeles to San Diego. Best thing I ever did. A lot cleaner. The people are a lot nicer. There's way more money out here. The weather is absolutely to die for. It's perfect. But now we have a problem with water. And I'm strategically looking, going, I thought this was, but it's serving me for now. But for my future life, I know that I want to live somewhere else where there's more water because I want to live off the land. I'm always seeking and strategizing. And I think that you can improve your own lives as well by seeing this design, getting this mindset straight, and going, taking a macro look and changing your life for the better. Why not? Why would we not try, guys? All right, that's the show, you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time here and listening to me ramble. If I brought you guys any value, it would really help me out if you would hit that like button, subscribe, share. The algorithms need this kind of movement for us to keep the show up. So if you can please do that for me, if I brought you guys any value. If you guys have an opposing opinion, you gave me a thumbs down, I am so happy for that. Let me know in detail what you think I said was wrong so that I can fix it and start living a better life myself. I see that as positive, negative, not even a negative in sight. So yes, I love the thumbs down. I love the different opposing opinions. So guys, there's the email below. You guys can get a hold of me there. Give me guys some suggestions. Send me some suggestions. Tell me what you guys want to hear. Just say hello. And as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. Strategize your life. Be happy. And human up, my friends.